welcome today. My name is Joyce Edison, and I want to welcome you to our live forum presentation with John Toomey. And John is the CEO of Wide Awake Wellness Limited in Melbourne, Australia. And John provides a lot of work in the area of employee well-being and the creation of safe, aligned, and productive workplaces. His specialty is being able to reach the blue collar male in high industrial workplaces. So, John, welcome to today's session. We're looking forward to your presentation. Please join us and share a little bit with us as we look forward to learning more about you and the work you do.
Hey, thanks, Joyce, and such a pleasure to be here and making a contribution to your Global Workplace Wellness Summit and your monthly presentations. I really love what you do. So, yeah, hi everyone. Look, my presentation today is about engaging men in blue-collar, high industrial workplaces. And it's such a fabulous place to work. So I thought I would just sort of really start by giving you a bit of a rundown and how I got into doing this. And, you know, I think all of us, we sort of, as we grow up in life, things happen and we have, you know, we have experiences that set us up for later life. And one of them was, for me, was that when I was 10 years old, my parents took over running a pub in the heart of Collingwood, which is a very much inner suburban, blue-collar suburb of Melbourne. And I lived in that pub till I was 17. And, you know, Collingwood was a pretty tough area back in those days. And, you know, you either had to be able to fight or run really fast or talk. And I couldn't fight and I wasn't a very fast runner. So, but I did learn to talk to men and listen to them. And in 2008, when the GFC hit, I had quite a successful business presenting wellness programs for banks and insurance companies and places like that. It was a lot of fun. And when the GFC hit, my business basically vaporized overnight. And it probably took 3 years of struggle to find a way that I could find relevance. I didn't want to give up on what I was doing. And it wasn't until a really good mate of mine who owned a blast and drill company in coal mining rang me and he said, what do you know about fatigue? And I thought, what an amazing question. And I had spent a lot of years in high performance roles in professional football, conditioning, nutrition, those sorts of things. And I said to him, well, as a conditioning coach, fatigue is a tool that we use to elicit a response. So I suppose I know a fair bit about fatigue. And he said that he had a real fatigue problem because he had teams working 7 12-hour shifts, and he had 2 shifts running every 24 hours. And after 7 days, those 2 shifts would leave and 2 more would come in. And he was afraid that these guys were going to kill themselves because a lot of them would jump in their car at the end of a 12-hour 7th shift in a row and drive 9 hours to their homes. And so I started to research fatigue and I was amazed by what wasn't there in all the official guidelines. So I put together a program, went and delivered it, and it was profoundly successful. And so it was a place where my presentation style really clicked. And, you know, that engagement really led me to some pretty intense exploration as to what I can do and what I can offer in the world. This picture here is at the Gladstone power station, which is a partnership between Rio Tinto, an Australian mining corporation, and NRG, an American power company. And there's 200 odd people in this room, and well, that was earlier this year. In fact, that was the last presentation I did before COVID kicked in. So the thing about blue collar blokes, and you know, there are some women in here too, you know, there's they tend to be practical types, and they don't like being told what to do, and they don't like being told when they should do something. And they also love to resist any form of authority. You know, they like to be independent and self-driven. but they're also incredible problem solvers and innovators. And when we understand these things and accept these things about these people, we can actually approach them and work with them. More about that later. And these are some of the presentations that we have to do. Like this session here was at 6:30 a.m. and it was at a Mirvac residential tower. So this is going to be a 40-story residential tower. Mirvac is an Australian company that specialises in that sort of thing. And the seminar was delivered on a concrete floor, standing up in a car park. That was the seminar room for the day, you know, but it was beautiful. See, and we're going to ask why these guys are engaged. So after the first few sessions that I did where I found this incredible engagement, the safety managers helped me out and they did some more informal interviews with workers to find out what they thought. And the responses were things like, it was really interesting, it was easy to understand, they thought I was on their level, and they also said that they felt that the work was really, really helpful. And so that sort of helped me frame my work up a little bit more and hopefully even get better at that sort of thing. And, you know, these people who work in these environments, whether they be construction, mining, oil and gas, rail, transport, and most of them are men, we've got to remember that they have a profound capacity for good. You know, when things go to hell, such as natural disasters or terrible fires, or even, you know, 9/11, when the towers were hit, these guys go into action and they don't stop. They're tireless. They don't clock on and clock off because they have a profound capacity to show up when they're needed. And that's the part of them that we've got to remember that we need to connect with. They do not like seeing people suffer. And they have a natural tendency to really get in there and get down on their knees. And if they have to go for 48 hours, they will. That's who they are as human beings. And I have a sense that this is part of the root cause of a lot of the mental health problems that men have, because we live in a time where there's not much need for that sort of action. There's not much need for men to show up and use their physical strength and their testosterone to actually do something extraordinary to help people, to solve a problem, to relieve suffering. And so a lot of men live their life with this profound sense of emptiness and they don't know where it comes from. And I have a sense that the two are linked there somewhere. But we can fix that by the way we approach them and the way we help them in the workplace. And this is where their wellness works. See, we've got to stop worrying about what they eat or whether they exercise. That's down the track. This is the part that we really need to focus on. That part where they can feel like their life is useful and it means something. But so often when I go into workplaces, that part of these guys has been forgotten. You know, I can't tell you the number of times I've arrived to deliver a seminar and some manager had said something to me like, listen, John, I just want to apologize in advance. These guys are rude, they're arrogant pigs. They don't listen, they're not going to pay attention. And I think, and one morning I did that. It was at Newcastle in the Hunter Valley, which is north of Sydney. And it was a water company, and 3 different managers said the same thing to me before the session started. And I was amazed. But when I walk into the room, I'm looking at a bunch of men who's somebody's husband, there's somebody's son, there's someone's dad, there's someone's partner, there's someone's brother, there's someone's uncle, there's someone's footy coach. And that's who I see. And within a minute, 1 minute, I had the connection with these guys. We went way over time. The questions were amazing. And those managers, 2 of them came to me and said, wow, I can't believe that. And I said, guys, you got to look at these guys differently. Stop looking at them as if they're just your workforce. They're human beings. You know, and so a big part of my work is to really connect the guys with a sense of purpose so they can feel like what they do on a daily basis is powerful and it has a lot of meaning because they do need to solve problems. A few years ago, I went down to drop into the offices of a big construction company here in Melbourne. They were about to do a major project. And to give you a sense of the scale of this project, Melbourne's greatest Achilles heel is level crossings. That's where trains cross roads and roads get blocked while the train crosses. And in rush hour or peak, we call it peak hour. In a lot of countries, it's called rush hour. That can be devastating. And Melbourne has over 200 level crossings. And it got to the point where Melbourne's public train system reached its capacity 30 years ago. And we can't schedule any more trains during rush hour because if we do, it'll send the city into gridlock. So our train system is overwhelmed. So a lot of people drive and it creates traffic problems. So we finally had a government come in who had the courage to remove these level crossings. So we have the level crossing removal projects. And on this particular site, these guys were about to remove 3 level crossings at once. So they spent a couple of years doing all the preparation for the task while traffic still flowed and trains still ran. And then they had an occupation. In the industry, it's called an OCCO. And the OCCO was going to run for 63 days. And in this 63 days, they had to first close the train lines and put a bus service in place to ferry people from one point to another. Second, they had to tear up the train lines. Third, they had to dig a valley. And it was the largest removal of earth in the history of urban Melbourne. So it's a big job because they were going to put the trains under 3 different roads. Then they had to turn those roads into bridges. Then they had to lay new tracks and they had to build 3 new underground railway stations. You get it? Put in new overhead lines because they're electric trains and get the whole thing working. And they had 63 days to do that. And they were going to have 1,000 people working on site around the clock and some very heavy equipment. And anyway, I popped in there about 3 weeks before the OCCO was about to start. And I just walked around the offices and started saying g'day to some of the employees. And, you would have sworn that these guys with their attitude, they felt like they were being sentenced to a firing squad. They were frightened of the project. They didn't know how they were going to achieve it. And they were very, very stressed. And their attitude was really negative. And the more I walked around there, I started to feel dread. And I went and knocked on the project manager's door. And I said, Steve, do you have a minute? And he said, sure. And I walked into his office and I said, Steve, somebody's going to die on this project. And he looked at me and he said, you serious? And I said, yep, you're going to have an accident. Someone's going to die. The attitude of the guys. And he said, yeah, I know. I'm really worried about them. And I said, well, we need to get them in a room. And I want you to let me talk to them. So a week later, we got them all in a room, hundreds of these men, and we had a talk. And it was really beautiful because all I did was talk to them about Melbourne. And at that point, 7 years in a row, Melbourne had been voted the world's most livable city. And I said to them, what makes a city livable is infrastructure, good roads, good sewage, good power, good public transport. And I talked to them about Melbourne's Achilles heel. And I talked to them about what was going to happen when they finished their job, when they finished this project and all the level crossing projects are finished. I said, what's going to happen is that trains will be able to run every 2 or 3 minutes on the important lines, which means people are going to be able to ride a train to work and get a seat rather than drive their car. They're going to get to work quicker and they're going to get home quicker. And when they do get home, they're going to be less stressed, which means they'll have more to give to their families. And dads and mums will have more time to spend with their kids. And they might even have more time to get involved in the community sports clubs, cricket, football, rugby, netball, soccer, whatever it is. And I said, you know, and those kids are going to grow up and they're going to have families. And they're going to be able to build their lives as a family and build their community, because there'll be lots of parents around, and it's going to create amazing, beautiful communities all the way into the future, because we will have a public transport system that will be so extraordinary and serve the community so well. And I said, guys, that's all going to happen because of what you're about to do. And so you, by this project, are going to ensure that Melbourne will be one of the great cities for decades to come. And it was amazing to just feel that room. It went from this sullen, negative space to this high vibration. And it was, by the end, the guys, like, they wanted to start the project right then. Anyway, they did it. They knocked it over in 61.5 days. And I went and spoke to Steve, the project manager, a couple of weeks later, and I said, tell me about it. And he said, oh, it was amazing. He said, we had no injuries. He said, there was 0 complaints, no complaints at all. He said, the only 2 things that we considered a complaint were 2 slightly negative tweets about the bus service. He said, during the project, we had citizens 4 and 5 deep around the perimeter fences watching, asking our workers what they were doing and what they were going to do next. The interest and the support from the community was extraordinary. He said, in fact, during that period, we became Melbourne's biggest tourist attraction. And isn't it amazing how when these guys got their attention on the fact that they were doing something extraordinary, everything shifted. And as now we look at that and go, that was a great project. And I bump into guys from time to time, they still talk about how extraordinary that experience was. And that's because we connected these guys with something that they need. That what they're doing on a day-to-day basis is important, and it's relieving suffering, and it's creating good for other human beings. That's what drives them. See, wellness programs in businesses, you can't go in and try and frighten these guys. They're not going to listen. You can't talk to them about disease statistics because it just washes over them. You know, giving them alarming data about heart disease or bowel cancer or prostate cancer, they fall asleep while you're giving them that. They don't care. You know, your message is going to get ignored. It's being self-righteous going and talking to them about it. They're not dumb. They know. And, you know, they're unlikely to visit a GP. See, because GPs, general practitioners, doctors, they've got no time to educate them on the level that they want to be educated. The GP is likely to fall into the trap of trying to tell them what to do. And we know where that's going to go, right? And if they don't understand what the GP is talking about, they're more likely to just ignore it. It's like the old, you know, they look at that sort of stuff and they just dismiss it. It's like the Black Knight in the Monty Python film, The Holy Grail, when King Arthur chops his leg off. He just says, oh, it's just a flesh wound. They really don't care that much. This was a great one. This was this time last year. It was early December. And I flew in on the overnight flight from Perth because I'd been up in the mines, and it was just it was a fire drill getting to this place, and got off the plane at 6 a.m. in Sydney and jumped on a taxi to go to Olympic Park where the Sydney Olympics are being held. And this is a 50-story residential tower that's being built. And there was 400 men in this seminar. And I was talking to them about care, because on one of the projects for this company, they'd had an accident where somebody got distracted and a glass panel fell from very high up. Nobody was hurt, but people could have been killed. And so this seminar was delivered 5 levels underground in a newly manufactured underground car park that was going to have 50 stories of residential tower above it. And yeah, it was amazing. So it's a simple approach really to working with men in these settings. First, they want to know how it works. They want to know why it breaks. They want to know what you can do to stop it from breaking, and they want to know what you can do if it breaks. And they want you to talk to them as if you, sorry, they don't want you to talk to them as if you know and they don't. Got to build trust with them. You know, these guys, they want to be able to self-manage. And for them to self-manage, they need to understand the mechanisms of how things work. It's really cool. Yeah. This was a bit of feedback from Harry Finn, who's a safety manager at a BHP coal mine. He said, I've never seen that before. 200 mine workers sitting in a room, fully engaged, asking good questions and not even slightly restless for 2 hours. And he said the last time we had someone come and talk to the guys about fatigue, it was for 40 minutes and most of them fell asleep. And he said the irony of that was completely missed on the presenter, because the presenter was telling them what to do. It doesn't work. This presentation here was just over a week ago at the Kadaidri mine camp. That's an iron ore mine in the Pilbara region of Western Australia, in the dry mess area, which is where they eat. It was at 6 a.m. and the outside temperature later that day was 113 degrees Fahrenheit. And these are an amazing group of people. There's about 200 of them there, and just amazing, beautiful human beings. See, you've got to deliver the mechanics when you speak to them. Your education needs to deliver the mechanics of the problem. For example, I worked out, 37 years ago, how to talk to people about hydration. And I'm going to give you an example of delivering mechanics of something. So what I'll say is I might ask a group of people if any of them find themselves yawning at 10:30 in the morning. And of course, a lot of people go, yeah, I yawn 10:30 in the morning. I go, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you know. And so then I tell them, I said, well, during the day, one of the key functions your blood serves is to remove heat from the core of your body. Your body's generating enormous amounts of heat all the time. All of your organs, your heart, your lungs, your kidney, your liver, your stomach, they're generating heat. And your skeletal muscles are generating huge amounts of heat. And your body must remove that heat. And it does that by trapping the heat in molecules of water in your bloodstream. Those molecules of water then get deposited in your sweat glands and in your lungs. The water that goes in your sweat glands just evaporates off into the atmosphere and you don't even notice it leave. The water that goes into your lungs comes out as water vapor in your expired air. And that's what a lot of you use to clean your sunglasses or your reading glasses. Now that water that's leaving your body is coming from your blood. So it's really important that your blood keep replenishing its water levels, and it does that by drawing water from your bowel. Most people don't realize that the bowel is the water tank. But if there's no water in the bowel and the blood can't replenish, it cannot stop giving water away, because the body has to cool itself. If it doesn't, it would cook yourself. So as the day goes on, if there's not adequate water in the bowel, the water level in the blood starts to drop, the blood volume starts to drop, and the blood starts to thicken. And when that happens, the efficiency of the circulation is compromised to the point where blood flow to the brain can be compromised, especially if you're sitting up vertically or you're standing up. And so when your brain stops getting enough blood, it stops getting enough oxygen and it stops getting enough glucose. So it switches on a reflex response. And the first reflex is you start yawning. Now, what happens to a lot of people when they start yawning is they'll go looking for some sort of pick-me-up. They'll go for a coffee or a soft drink or a soda, as you call it, or one of those terrible energy drinks, or they'll go and smoke a cigarette to get a shot of nicotine, something to lift them. And they come back to their workstation and feel better. But the reason they feel better is probably because they had to walk somewhere and that pushed their blood pressure back up. So eventually the symptoms come back. And when they do come back, the brain goes for plan B. And plan B is designed to do two things. Number one, to slow down the metabolic rate. And number two, to get the body horizontal so that blood can flow more easily to the brain. And I asked them to guess what plan B is. And of course, they all get it. It's sleep. Your body starts feeling drowsy. You start dozing off. And that's when I tell them that in most cases, people who fall asleep behind the wheel of motor vehicles are just dehydrated. In fact, the average Australian, the average American, the average Canadian are all chronically dehydrated because people just don't drink enough water. And a lot of people have lost their thirst reflex because we're constantly wetting our mouths at things that don't hydrate us very well. And by now, these guys get it. That all figures, they all understand that. Then I tell them how much water they need to drink. So on a cool day, every human being should be drinking a litre of water for every 25 kilograms of body weight. Or if I convert that to American, that's about a pint for every 25 pounds. And a lot of people are horrified by that amount of water. And, you know, people who don't normally drink much water who start drinking that one are going to be urinating like crazy because their body doesn't know what to do with it, because it can take the body between 4 and 6 weeks to properly hydrate itself. But then when it does, we're good. And then I ask the guys when they think they're at their most dehydrated. And of course, it's the mornings. And I teach them how when the body is dehydrated, it has to ration water around the system. And because of that, it can't produce much urine. So when you do pass your urine, it's much more concentrated and it's darker in color. Whereas when you're properly hydrated, your urine should be very close to water-colored. And I say to these guys, I'll bet you your urine glows in the dark when you wake up in the morning, you're so dehydrated. And they agree. And I say to them, okay, so the way to start your day is drink 25% of your daily water requirement as soon as your feet hit the floor. Then you start your day hydrated. Then you start making better decisions about food and you're more energized. And then I teach them how to monitor their water during the day if they're out working in those extreme temperatures. And I won't labor you with it now, but I basically say that you need to be drinking enough water so that you can have a big urination every 2 hours. And that urination has got to be pretty close to water-colored. And that's how you care for your friends. Because if you're working with somebody and notice they haven't gone to the toilet for 3 hours, you know they're in trouble and you can get on to them about it. And so out in some of those hot conditions, some of those guys are drinking 20 litres of water per day. And so we teach them also about the importance of supplementing electrolytes. But you can see there from what I did is I taught them the mechanics of it and they just get it. You can see them going clunk, clunk, clunk. And the feedback I get from the sites when I leave always is, I can't believe everybody's walking around with big water bottles and they're keeping each other accountable because they know it's important. Because the really cool thing about the hydration message is, as soon as they start, they notice a shift in their energy levels and they trust then. They realize, wow, he knows what he's talking about. And so then they start taking care of everybody else. And it's really beautiful. It's very, very cool. So that's giving them the mechanics. And you can do the same by teaching them how heart disease manifests. You can teach them about how inflammation manifests. And if I've got time, I'll also teach them why dehydration is at the core of gastric reflux and heartburn. I teach them why it's at the core of osteoarthritis. It's really cool. They get it. And, you know, it doesn't matter what the culture is. This was Fiji. And here I am. There's two different seminars here. That bottom left-hand corner was at the main office, and they had a lot of the workers come in. And then this other one, the other three photos, was out on site. And I did a lot of seminars in Fiji. These are all road construction workers, and they sit cross-legged on the floor for 2 hours, completely comfortable. It's really beautiful. It was very funny because in that room, you see the light from coming through the doorway at the back of the room. I was getting prepared to speak, and all of a sudden, it went dark in the room, and I looked up, and this massive presence had just walked through the door and blocked out all the light. It was amazing. I thought, oh, I have to connect with him after. And I did, and that's him down the bottom right-hand corner. And you notice, like, I'm 6'4", and his knees are bent. And his name's Sonny Savu, and he was a Fijian international rugby union player, a flanker. And I walked up to him outside to say hello, and he had tears rolling down his cheeks. It was extraordinary. And I said, hey, mate, how you going? And he said, bro, what are we going to do about the teenagers? And I said, what do you mean? He said, in my village, the teenagers, all they drink is soft drink, soda. He goes, I didn't realize how bad it is. What are we going to do? How do we fix that? That's how much care was in his heart. Just this huge man standing there being okay to show me how he felt. It was really cool. I fell in love with him. He's just, and all of them, they're just beautiful human beings. And they all love their families. You know, we forget that. They just love their families. Now, next thing is to learn to embed your teaching with powerful stories, because stories create reference points in consciousness. Now, I tell a lot of stories, and I've just come back from the Pilbara in Western Australia, as I showed you in the photo. And whilst I was there, I was delivering a 90-minute session on care, inspiring the guys to step up and have more care for each other, for those around them in their workplace, for their employers, when they're at home, in their community, for their kids, their partners, and all the people around them in the community. And, you know, we live in a time where, as I said earlier, you know, nobody has many great problems in terms of physical survival, but mental health is huge. And one of the things that these men can do is they can become more aware of what's really going on for people so they can show up and help. And they're really up for it. You know, when men sort of really remember how they can care for each other and how sometimes tough love is really genuine care, they're incredible. And I'm going to share with you a story that I tell these guys to give you an example of what a story is like. And one of the stories I tell them is about when I was 41 or 42, I was still playing footy. I love Aussie rules football. It's a great game. I was fit enough, so I was playing. And there's 4 quarters in a game of Aussie rules, and we were playing against a team from a part of town that's very working class, quite tough. And when these guys ran out in the field, you know, this is nearly 20 years ago, there was a lot of tattoos and, hard-looking lads. And anyway, the game started, and one of them, he was a big guy, not as tall as me, but certainly heavier, and a bodybuilder, and very big, you know, huge arms. And he was running around, hitting people, just throwing huge punches, no reason. And in Australian rules football, there's no offside. The players are spread across the field. So he was getting behind packs and belting people. And I looked at it, I thought, oh my God, why is he doing that? That's unprovoked. There's no need for that. And I spoke to the umpire and I said, umpire, you've got to do something about it. And of course, umpires are often very intimidated when they've got guys like that on the field. And he just told me to concentrate on my own game. You know, he made it my problem. He wasn't going to deal with it. And I was the biggest, ugliest guy on my team and very experienced. And so I made a decision that I have made before in footy. And my decision was that I was going to knock him out before he hurt somebody. And so that's what I set about planning to do. Running around the field looking for my opportunity, because you've got to do it when the umpires don't see you. But as I ran, I must have been starting to finally mature by then. And I realized that if I did that, I was as bad as he was. Plus, it would give his teammates a reason to do what he was doing, and it could get ugly and somebody could get very hurt. So at the quarter time siren, as his team were running across to their huddle and my team was running across the huddle, I ran across and intercepted him. And I said, mate, have you got a minute? And he shaped up to me and he said, what? I said, hey, it's okay. I just want to talk to you for a sec. And he said, what? I said, well, I'm a pretty good guy. You don't know me. And I said, all my teammates over there, they're all really good guys too. And I said, in fact, some of them are dads and their kids are here watching. And I said, I imagine you're a pretty good guy too. And all your teammates, they're probably pretty good guys too. I said, so I can't quite understand why you're doing what you're doing. And he looked at me and I swear to you, his face nearly fell off. And he said, oh, gee, mate, I'm so sorry. He said, I can be such an idiot sometimes. I just get carried away. I can be a real idiot sometimes. I said, really? And he said, oh, yeah, mate. He goes, I just get carried away. I said, well, look, how about we do this? Put your fist back in your pocket. Let's have a really good game of footy and I'll buy you a beer after the game. He said, yeah, all right, mate. Okay. And off I ran. And all I could hear behind me was, sorry, mate. Sorry, mate. And I was shaking my head thinking, what just happened? For the rest of the game, every time I did something that was, half useful, he ran past him and go, well done, mate. I even heard him complimenting some of my teammates. And at one point, he even ran into the middle of the ground and put his hand on the umpire's shoulder and said, Umpy, you're doing a great job, mate. He was a different human being. After the game, I was in the social rooms, I'd showered, I was dressed, and he came walking through the crowd with 2 beers and he handed me one. And I said, I was going to get you the beer. And he said, oh no, I owe you the beer. And I said, why is that? And he said, because I have not enjoyed a game of footy like that since I was a kid. I had such a good time today. I said, well, you played a good game. And because I had attention on him, I recalled the things he did and I rattled them off, And he said, oh, thanks. I said, but listen, what about that other stuff? How's that working for you in your life? And he said, no, not very good. I said, no, I get it. I said, have you got kids?
Join the meeting.
He said, yes, I do. And I said, do you see them? And he said, no, I don't. See, that's heartbreaking. For me, that is heartbreaking. And I thought for a moment, what is his football club doing? Who's helping this guy? And I said to him, do you want to do something about it? And he said, I probably need to, don't I? And I said, absolutely you do. And I said, I've got a really good friend who specializes in working with guys just like you. And he said, really? I said, yep. Do you want to meet him? And he said, I do. I said, all right, well, give me your phone number. So he did. And this was Saturday. And I said, I want to call you Monday morning. What time? And he said, well, I have my morning tea break at 10 o'clock. I said, okay. So if I call you with my mate on the line at 10 o'clock Monday, will you answer? And he said, I promise you I'll answer. So the next day I rang my friend, told him all about it. He was excited. He loves working with guys like that, really helping them with their anger. So 10 o'clock Monday morning, I rang my friend, 3-way call, connected in. I connected them up. We had a bit of a chat. I introduced them and I left them to it. And about 11 months later, I got a text from my friend to let me know that he was seeing his kids that weekend. And the message I give to the guys from that story is, take notice of what's going on around you. You can really help people. And sometimes, and my quote to them is, sometimes people who are behaving like idiots are not actually idiots. They're people who are screaming out for help. And that's workmates, that's people out in the community, and you can do it. And the storytelling lands that so powerfully in their universe that they get it. And from there, they act. See, stories help people to feel. We've got to get out of the intellectual space. It doesn't work. Help people to feel. And when people feel, you reconnect them with their hearts. It doesn't matter who they are. Big, burly construction workers. One of the sessions I did last week was at a really remote mine. And this audience were these really hardened construction workers who didn't like people from the outside very much. There was 150 of them. And as they marched in the room, you should have seen the looks that some of them gave me. It was hilarious, you know, like, who the hell are you, you know? By the time I finished, so many of them came up to the front and they waited their turn. They looked me in the eye, shook my hand, said thank you. Many of them with really damp eyes, because it helped them to feel again. And when they feel, compassion returns, their humanity returns, and that macho alpha male aspect of them that they present to the world, it has a little rest. It's very cool. And you know, I always leave my male-dominated groups with a message, and it's this: it's impossible to feel good if you don't feel good about yourself. And if you want to sleep well at night, you've got to feel good about yourself, because if you go to bed hating yourself, it's not going to be cool. You're going to need things to help you to sleep. And I say, there's one thing that you can do every day, multiple times a day, that's going to help you to feel really good about yourself. It's something that you all know how to do. And it's simply this: just be kind. You want to feel the room in that moment. It's incredible. These beautiful hearts, just so full of love, you know. It's amazing. Just got to show them where to point it. So that's it for my presentation content. Has anyone got any questions?
This was so powerful. Thank you so, so much. You know, the question that comes to mind is, what are some things that people usually ask you? What is one of the questions that people often ask you when you, after a presentation like this? And I have several more, but I'm curious to know what you usually get asked.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's often they'll pull me aside and they'll talk to me about how they help. Their questions are always about how they can help somebody that's in their life. You know, they're already in that mindset of wanting to help.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so cool. Or they'll say, we've got this guy that we work with and he does this and he does that. What do you reckon? I really would love to be able to help him with that. So their questions are always in that direction. It's so interesting. I think once you wake that up, that's where their attention goes. Yeah.
I loved your presentation. There was so many nuggets from it. And to move ahead, and I think someone said, it was Lori, she said, excellent presentation. And I think that's the piece that what you've done is untangle the web for us, because many of us, I have a son, I have a husband, many of us have the male employees or family members, and we're curious, how do you actually get to them and get them to listen or to understand. And I love the example you shared of how you show them the mechanics of things, because the male brain works differently, right? Understanding those mechanics and why. And I love the story of what happens to your body when you don't drink enough water, what water does, like understanding what water does, what it does in your body, what happens when you don't have it, and how you can ensure you have enough, and making it easy for them to follow those patterns and bring that into their life, and then to look out for others. So that was very well done. And I think for even for those of us who are females who are training, because I train and my groups are usually multi group is usually both males and females in there, and so multi-gender groups. And so how do we get our males to understand and to implement just as effectively as everyone else? And I think that was a really good way to put that. So I'm going to ask from the audience, do you have any questions for John? Just type it in the chat or put your hand up if you have a question. What was interesting for you? What questions did you have, and what stood out for you in the presentation? So we have Lindsay, we have Blair, we have Anna. Any of you? Nope. So John, you were talking about going to the various locations and working with the males in the various groups. So when you look at your clientele, they are either in construction, you said, mining, what else? Some
rail transport,
warehousing.
warehousing.
So they work with their hands. They tend to be people who work with their hands, who are, you call them blue collar males. And you talk about their heart, how big their hearts are. And I think that was so positive to hear that. And your heart came through to this presentation. And I think that's what we see, is how big your heart is. And I think that's a big part of it. You're sharing your heart with them. And I think it's just a return. So that was a very well put together, very powerful presentation. And I know all the participants and those who registered who are not here, who are going to be looking at the rerun, will all benefit from it, because I know I learned quite a lot today. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Joyce. It's really cool to have the opportunity to present to your audience, which I know is a lot bigger than what's here today. So yeah, really cool.
Yes, we will definitely be sharing this and letting everyone see you and be able to. Someone is coming in now. She must have been kicked. Must have had to leave. So that we can make this available to our network and to share with our list this very powerful presentation. All right. Any other comments, questions? Let me just see what somebody had some comments in the chat. Thank you. This was excellent. I appreciate the perspective. It's good to see the other side. Thank you. Great to see you in action. I'm sorry I missed most of this, but what I heard was excellent. Thank you. Yes, it was a very, very great presentation. And I like how John was able to break it down to show us using the stories in our presentation, creating meaning for people. And I think that's powerful. I think all of us can benefit from adding these examples into our presentation. John, thank you again. And we so appreciate having you here at the summit, sharing with us. And of course, as we share with more people so they get the tools in their work and in their life, that's important to us.
Thanks, Joyce. Take care, huh?
All right. Thanks. Bye, everyone. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Bye now.